Welcome to Buffalo Pregame, your source for live Buffalo football discussion, news, analysis, opinions, and more. Presented by ASM Publications and Bills Digest.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Buffalo Pregame. My name is Alex Brasky. I am your host, and here to discuss Bills' day one of training camp out at St. John Fisher in Rochester. It was an action-packed day out there on the field. I was happy to be there. Big shout out to my man Del Reed for hooking me up with a ticket. I'm not credentialed media at this point, just with Bills Digest. The Bills have not provided a credential for Bills Digest for training camp. So kind of on the outside looking in, but it was good to take in day one on the grounds at St. John Fisher University, and not to be so much of a fly on the wall, but really a fly hovering around the action that was taking place on the practice field on Wednesday. And as always, this is Buffalo Pregame. Each week, I will provide updates on the NFL, NHL, and more via daily articles, podcasts, videos, and more. Please subscribe to Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, along with Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky on Substack, both of which are free of charge. All right, let's get into it then. All the action from day one at Bills training camp, and the highlight of the day, you may have seen the highlight posted by the Bills official social media page on X or otherwise, as Max Hairston was really the highlight of the day. A big play made by the rookie cornerback near the end of team drills, 11-on-11, was working against KJ Hamler along the back line of the end zone on the left side of the field. And he was beaten on the route initially. Hamler was able to gain some space between he and the defender, but Harrison was able to use that speed and that athleticism that the Bills drafted him for, and he was able to catch up, make a diving attempt at the play, and nearly picked it off, able to contact it, the ball that is, with two hands and knock it to the turf, and got up boisterously and created a bit of a response from the Bills defense, and Trey White came rushing over to him to congratulate him. And we've seen Trey White really assume that leadership role since he arrived back in Buffalo this offseason. We heard him talk at the podium about that during the offseason program, how he was more than willing to share his knowledge with rookie cornerback Max Hairston, and being excited for him is a good thing. These two are in competition for that cornerback 2 role opposite Christian Benford, who we'll get to a little bit later. What a day from him. So to see two players who are in competition with each other celebrate together after a play made by one of them was surely exciting. And it didn't start out anything special for Max Hairston. I think he made a couple of nice plays. He was beaten on a couple of plays. One that stands out, he was able to limit Curtis Samuel near the sideline, able to get him under wraps and prevent him from turning a small gain into a much larger gain. But there really wasn't anything to write home about until late in the practice. He made that great play, and that's how it can be with these defenders, or any player for that matter, during training camp. One play can really get you excited, because that's really what you see during training camp. You see flashes. It's not as tangible as you'd like it to be. These guys aren't even in pads yet. It was a non-contact practice. The team drills all took place within the red zone. So it's not like they're running around out there at full go by any stretch of the imagination. So you have to take this with proper context. But at the same time, it's exciting to see the flash of brilliance from the first-year pro and do exactly what the Bills drafted him to do, and that's to be this athletic player that can make up for maybe getting beat at the top of the route, as you saw today with that great recovery speed and the great athletic ability and know-how to dive and knock it away before it reached KJ Hamler. So a nice play from Max Hairston, who's also dealing with some off-the-field concerns, sexual assault allegations lodged against him, leading to a civil suit filed by the accuser. And after Wednesday's practice, Bills general manager Brandon Beane addressed the media regarding the allegations. Quote, "That's frustrating," said Beane. "This happened to this young man over 4 years ago. He gave up his phone to prove he took polygraph tests. This kid didn't run from anything. He answered every single thing. We have to remember in society that people can make accusations and do things, and I have no idea what the agenda is there. But I can tell you, every stone we turned over, every door we looked behind, this is a very good young man, a young man you would let in your house, watch your kids, whatever. He is genuinely a good person." Beane continued, "I think we need to remember in the world, sometimes these guys can be victims too. They make a lot of money." And he went on to say how it's not often that players placed in this situation have people stick up for them. And that seems to be exactly what Beane was doing for Max Hairston. Hairston also addressed the media after practice, and in a video caught by WKBW's Matt Beauvais, Hairston said, quote, "It's been 4 years now. I went through the process with the police. They went through a thorough investigation, and I was exonerated from that. More. The University of Kentucky did a thorough investigation, and I was exonerated from that as well. And I volunteered to do multiple polygraphs because I was determined to get my truth out there because I have nothing to hide. I was an open book. I have 2 sisters that I love dearly, and I respect all females." That's from the Bills' rookie cornerback, as he and the Bills' general manager both asked about the pending civil case that Max Hairston is dealing with. All right, moving on to more updates from training camp. Plenty of those to feed through the wire here, as Christian Benford, a huge day at cornerback. It seemed like everybody he was matched up against, knocking passes away from Dalton Kincaid, from Keon Coleman and the like. Just a phenomenal day, and it's come to be expected from the Bills' number 1 cornerback. Benford has turned into a complete player on defense, and boy, he was proving it time and again on Wednesday at St. John Fisher. It was Benford and Tre'Davious White with the first team defense for most of the day. Max Hairston did mix in a little bit with the first team, largely with the second team. He was paired alongside Dane Jackson for much of the day. Jamarcus Ingram was also out there with Jackson that I saw. And then at safety, you had Cole Bishop, who you're going to have to rip this safety position away from him if you're DeMar Hamlin or Derek Forrest. Bishop was out there extensively with the first team. At one point, he was paired with with Hamlin back there. So Hamlin, potentially a backup for both positions. But Bishop had a clean day, nothing to really write home about one way or the other, positively or negatively. He was held out with an unknown ailment during the spring, and it was good to see that he was back out there in full. It was expected that he was going to be out there and that injury wouldn't carry over, but good to get confirmation on that. Bishop, that's really the only way that I see the starting role not going to Cole Bishop, is if he sustains a preseason injury, as he did similarly a season ago. So Cole Bishop, and it seems like Tre'Davious White, maybe not so much Tre'Davious White as Cole Bishop, but leaders at their given positions in the race for a starting job, with Max Hairston also a factor for that cornerback 2 role. Another significant storyline entering training camp was James Cook. Was he going to show up? Was he going to participate? If so, at what level? Was he going to hold in? Were there going to be more posturing going on? No, Cook was out there in full, giving it his all through complete participation. No problem there. And Brandon Beane, very positive in his comments about Cook after practice concluded, said, I think everyone knows I'm going to have an open dialogue with the players. We'll let the business take care of itself. James is a competitive dude. He's a stud. He's a great teammate. He wants to be here. And he also went on to say that he envisions a path where James Cook is, and not only that, he wants it to be the case that James Cook is suiting up for practice at St. John Fisher at this time next year when the Bills return for training camp in 2026. And that would mean James Cook worked out a new contract with the Bills. I think they're far apart in negotiations right now, but still a long way to go and unknown how those are going to go. So it was good to see Cook out there remaining a good soldier for his team. I think we're going to hear from him tomorrow. He might speak with reporters. I've heard rumblings that that will be the case. Also, there were some injuries to report. Tight end Dawson Knox placed on the non-football injury list. It's been determined he has a hamstring injury. And Brandon Beane said that it occurred during a workout that Knox was undergoing away from the team. But Knox knows his body, quote, until he's back out there, you have some concern, but I think he and the medical team know what it's going to take to get him back out there. So doesn't seem to be too much concern with Dawson Knox. As a result of his absence, though, Zach Davidson saw some increased opportunity with the first team offense. Didn't make the most of it, let a potential touchdown really go right through his hands in the back of the end zone. Jackson Hall, as the rookie, got a few snaps with Josh Allen. So the Bills throwing the rookie Jackson Hawes into the fire. We saw good things from him during the offseason program, and he's continued to build on that. With Brown out, and that's a back injury for Spencer Brown, as he's on the physically unable to perform list, as he was named to that list previously. With him out, Tylen Grable was inserted with the first team offense at right tackle, as was expected. It seemed like he had won that swing tackle job from Ryan Vandermark a year ago, and that has continued into this season. Also injured today, Cedric Van Pran Granger with a calf injury. He was also placed on the physically unable to perform list along with Brown. And then Laviska Shenault dealing with a lower leg injury. He missed practice. He's not on a list of any kind, but the wide receiver dealing with a lower leg injury. It's going to take something at the return position, I think, for Laviska Shenault to work his way onto this roster. As Matt Dygert, hopefully I got that correct. Bad with names. He comments on X, not worried about Spencer Brown. Seems more precautionary. I would agree. Doesn't seem like any of these guys are significant as of yet. So I'm sure Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, and otherwise will continue to be asked about it. So we'll have to continue to monitor those guys' injuries. Another oft-injured player, linebacker Balin Spectre. He missed the team's offseason program with an unknown injury. But he was back on Wednesday and made a nice play during the session. Recovered. Nice pass breakup near the back of the end zone. Spectre, it was talked about widely throughout the offseason. Mook Man, my dog, in the house, running for school board. I don't know if it's president, but he's running for school board. About to win that election. He could run for mayor and win. But Spectre has been injured throughout his entire Bills career, and the early offseason injury created cause for concern. But seeing him out there today, really at full go for the Bills, during their first training camp practice and making a play for the Bills defense. Certainly a good sign for his quest to make the final roster. And then another low-key positional battle, Mitch Trubisky and Mike White. I'd give Trubisky the early edge. I think we were expecting that. He was largely second in the pecking order. I think he always came in. Yes, he always came in immediately after Josh Allen. Mike White being third, Shane Buechele fourth. Buechele had a great throw to KJ Hamler in the right corner of the end zone, up high, where only Hamler, who's not a sizable player, only where he could get it. Hamler made a great catch as well. And the two celebrated afterward after the touchdown. It was an impressive throw from Shane Buechele, but we won't harp on the backup QB battle. It'll be interesting to follow, but not quite sure how to read it quite yet. And Matt comments again, how did Moore and Palmer look? I think both players are going to mix in gradually here. I think Josh Allen at the beginning of camp trying to get his legs under him. I think you're going to see him go to some of these familiar targets, as we saw from him today. Touchdown to Dalton Kincaid. But he did have a touchdown pass to Elijah Moore. I think it was the only completion from Allen to Moore throughout team drills. And it was one of those plays where Moore running a route in the short flat to the right, kind of using his speed and athleticism to gain the separation needed to make himself presentable for Josh Allen. And Allen made the throw. Wasn't really a flashy play, but a good connection between the two nonetheless. As Elijah Moore is going to be an interesting one to watch. I've liked him, honestly, in my mind anyway, more than Joshua Palmer this entire offseason. And Palmer seems like a player to me that Allen might struggle to build that rapport with. It might be more of a timing thing with those two. Palmer, a refined route runner, somebody who can gain that separation, but maybe not as much short area quickness as Elijah Moore. I don't think there's many receivers with as much short area quickness as him. And I think a player like that can really work wonders for Allen. And it's something that he was accustomed to years ago with Cole Beasley. I think Beasley was maybe different in the way that he used his knowledge of the game and leverage against defenders to work himself open in the short to mid area. But I think you're going to see a lot of that from Elijah Moore this year. I'm not sure what his over-under is set at, but I would take over 25, 30 receptions for Elijah Moore this year. I think he's going to be a nice security blanket for Josh Allen. And then with Joshua Palmer, I think you're going to see him perhaps used a bit more down the field. And that's another thing. I think the way that they structured practice today, it was a lot of red zone. And Palmer, I think, might be a between the 20s production guy going down the field, getting you those seam balls and go routes and otherwise trying to open things up in this passing game this year as they did with Dalton Kincaid not so well a season ago. Kincaid did have a touchdown reception today, though. Seems to have bulked up a little bit. Not all that noticeable, but you can tell he's a little bit more cut, as they say, running around with confidence as he has all spring. But elsewhere on the wide receiver front, it was kind of a tough day for Keon Coleman. Had a couple balls knocked away from him by Christian Benford. One of them I thought would have been clear pass interference. The officials on hand were really letting the defenders play. But Coleman, he's still going to struggle to create that separation against top-tier defenders. And they're going to have to rely on him with jump balls, 50-50s, and I just don't know if that's as a consistent way of going about things as you'd like it to be. I think you'd like to see him, like I said, similar to Elijah Moore and what Joshua Palmer is capable of, getting open in space and letting your quarterback find you It was in the short area down near the goal line, so you got to take things with a grain of salt today. It's not everything for these players. But if we're judging it one day at a time, Keon Coleman showing some of the concerning signs that we saw from him a season ago. I think it's been a good offseason for him, though. I've seen signs the other way as well. I think it's going to be a learning process for him. You're going to see some growing pains this year. He's gotten a little bit stronger as well. So don't write him off quite yet. Obviously, don't write anybody off in this wide receiver core. But interested to see how that shakes out. Elsewhere on offense, you did have Cook there. Ray Davis, Ty Johnson catching passes out of the backfield. So the running back room is solidified with those three. It's one of the top trios in the league. And if Cook is here with something to prove, he could really be dangerous this season. At tight end, I told you about Hawes and Davidson. Offensive line, Grable in there for Brown. No pads. But it was a decent day for Javon Solomon and TJ Sanders, both getting some penetration. No pads on, no real contact. So it's always tough to judge the guys inside. A couple of members of the media caught up with TJ Sanders after practice. I have yet to listen to that conversation, but he's a guy who just sounds very mature, very confident in his ability. There was a moment during spring practices where Sanders was hitting the sled, and he got a cramp while he was hitting the sled. He was trying to stretch it out, and a coach came over to him and tried to correct him a bit abrasively, as coaches do. Nothing over the top. And Sanders just matter-of-factly told him he was dealing with a cramp. He wasn't able to give his best effort. And it was just this quiet confidence, I think, that you heard from him at that time for a rookie that was pretty impressive. And I think you're seeing it with his play, too. He plays well beyond his years, a very confident player. And then Javon Solomon, if he can get in here and really start to impact the game and have some splash plays throughout training camp, you could see him start to gain some ground in that pass rushing room. And that's what you're going to have to see from him during training camp. You're going to have to see Javon Solomon in the backfield to give this coaching staff confidence. And then he's also going to have to be somewhat reasonably stout against the run as well. He can't be a turnstile against the run if they're going to put him out there. So a lot to prove for Javon Solomon once the pads come on. My man Mookie back. How did Jordan Hancock look today at safety? Hancock was actually playing some nickel cornerback today. That's where I saw him, I believe, the entirety of the time on the field. And I believe he was playing second team nickel cornerback. So that was an interesting development. Brandon Beane throughout the offseason saying that they saw him more at safety, but he does have that nickel cornerback ability, and Taron Johnson's going to need a predecessor eventually, a big nickel. Correct, Mookie. Player who can come up and hit. And with an undersized linebacker like Terrell Bernard and the way they like to play up front with speed, I think that's something that could work for Hancock moving forward, and that's how it's developed in the early going. Linebacker, nothing much to write home about. Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard on the field, Dorian Williams filtering in. That's going to be a good group. If they can stay healthy, boy, that's going to be a really good group. Back up front, though, Joey Bosa, which I didn't include. I think I might update my article. I didn't include, but he was out there participating in full, looking very confident and healed from his offseason calf injury. He spoke with the media after practice, said that he's feeling as good as he has in years. I know that players say that a lot, but he was adamant. He feels good. And he looked good out there. He's a big guy. If he can stay healthy, it's similar to that linebacker position. If this defensive line can remain intact and get what you think out of Joey Bosa, that's going to be a very, very impressive thing to watch. I thought I did include the Bosa thing. Must have forgotten. I did highlight that in my Twitter post as one of the bullets. I think I may have just forgotten to copy and paste. I had to write that on my phone in the shuttle bus back to Pittsford Sutherland. So maybe something went awry. I'll have to update that for the people. But Bosa looking strong. Maybe Keon Coleman, some stuff to work on. Tyler Bass, a perfect day. 6 for 6 on the day with Brad Robbins as his holder. And we'll get you the yardage on those. We had Tyler Bass from 33, 40, 45, 35, 43, and 48. Prime conditions at St. John Fisher. Brad Robbins, I timed a few of his punts. 4.11 seconds of hang time. 4.43, 4.53, 4.58. So hovering around the acceptable range. Unofficial times, of course. Sometimes I may have been slow, sometimes quick on the trigger using my iPhone stopwatch. So take those very much with a grain of salt. But I think he had a fine day holding and punting as well. I was on the far end when he was punting, so it was tough to judge how long the punts were traveling through the air. And I think that's about it. You saw Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi out there. They're going to be suspended for the first 6 games of the season, but boy, Hoyt looks like a workout warrior, someone who's always in great shape. Ogunjobi was out there as well. Both of them mixed in with the first team at times. So, a lot to follow as training camp heats up here. And you can follow it all right here on Buffalo Pregame. I'm hoping to get back out to training camp. You got any tickets, send them my way. I could always use a ticket or two, especially to this weekend's sessions. Excited to see how things develop over the next several weeks and months. If you think I left anything out, feel free to comment. Like I said, on my Substack, I seem to have left out the Joey Bosa snippet that I had planned. Let me see if I, in fact, included that. Yeah, I do have Bosa health update, and then I don't have it in there. All right, well, I'll have to update that and get back on the grind tomorrow as Bills training camp never sleeps. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Buffalo Pregame. My name is Alex Brasky. We'll see you next time.